Let's jump right in. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to objectively unpack a seriously fascinating and, honestly, highly unconventional set of economic policy proposals published in Japan back in 2012. We're looking at a text that takes standard macroeconomic anxiety and answers it with some of the most radical monetary visions you'll probably ever encounter. Whether you're an economics student, a policy buff, or just someone who loves exploring outside-the-box thinking, this analysis is absolutely going to challenge how you look at the fundamental rules of national economies. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with 1, the 2012 spiritual message, move into 2, debunking financial collapse, explore 3, the pro-inflation route, dive into 4, privatizing currency, and finally wrap up with 5, investing in the future. Section 1, the 2012 spiritual message. Let's establish our primary source, because it's pretty unique. We're analyzing a 2012 book authored by Ryuho Okawa titled What Would Keynes Do About the Japanese Economy? And get this, it's framed as a spiritual message channeled straight from the legendary 20th century British economist John Maynard Keynes, recorded right around January 3rd, 2012. Now, keeping entirely neutral on that spiritual premise, we are going to dive headfirst into the very real, tangible economic blueprint it lays out. Specifically Chapter 5, which gives us a bold, maybe even audacious, roadmap for Japan's future. Section 2, debunking financial collapse. In Chapter 5, the author takes dead aim at the status quo anxiety that was totally paralyzing Japan's economic policy at the time. The prevailing narrative was this intense fear of an inevitable financial collapse because of the country's massive government debt. Authorities were pushing hard for austerity and tax hikes to stop a sovereign default. But this text, it outright dismisses that fear. It boldly asserts that a financial bankruptcy for Japan is practically impossible. Why? Because it points directly to the country's underlying economic fortress, its colossal reserves of personal financial assets, and the sheer massive scale of its GDP. The argument here is that the government is foolishly confusing its own balance sheet with the actual, much larger wealth of the entire nation. Section 3, the pro-inflation route. So, having tossed the debt crisis out the window, the text pivots to what it sees as the real enemy here. It heavily criticizes central bank authorities, arguing they're basically acting like inflation fighters in a building that desperately needs to be warmed up. It argues that leaving a deflationary spiral unchecked is a catastrophic policy failure. Instead, it insists that true, sustained economic development is completely impossible without a deliberate shift. The book advocates for setting clear inflation targets to create a moderate, controlled inflation route. And this isn't presented as some necessary evil. It's an absolute prerequisite to wake the economy from its stagnation and get people spending and investing again. Section 4, privatizing currency issuings. Okay, this is where our explainer transitions from standard macroeconomic debates into truly radical, paradigm-shifting territory. Take a look at the Chapter 5 table of contents. It doesn't just stop at an inflation target. It proposes sweeping systemic changes to the very architecture of how Japan handles its money. The stated goal isn't just domestic stability anymore. It's to elevate the yen to unprecedented power on the global stage. To achieve that kind of global dominance, the text outlines a genuinely unorthodox strategy. Step 1, abolish the central bank's absolute monopoly on printing money. Crazy, right? Step 2, actually privatize currency issuance by allowing successful megabanks and proven business leaders to issue their own currency, essentially creating a competitive market for money itself. And Step 3, use this dynamic, expanded monetary supply to establish the yen as a global key currency, a foundational standard of value worldwide. It's a proposal that totally forces us to question why the state must be the sole creator of money in a modern economy. Section 5, investing in the future. Now, the text doesn't just want to print money for the fun of it. It ties these radical policies to a grand physical vision. It insists Japan must fulfill what it terms its public mission, or in Japanese, oyake no shime. It defines this not as balancing a spreadsheet through financial austerity, but as a moral and economic imperative to execute massive, forward-looking investments. True leadership, it argues, means looking decades ahead and investing the capital required to ensure the nation thrives for generations, rather than just retreating in fear of debt. Specifically, Chapter 5 calls for funneling this new economic energy into large-scale national infrastructure projects. It explicitly highlights making sweeping upgrades to the transportation network. The idea is that by pouring resources into physical connectivity and state-of-the-art transit, the country gets an immediate economic stimulus while simultaneously building the literal foundation for a visionary future. It actually compares this level of ambition to building a modern-day Great Wall, but, not for isolation, as a monumental investment in domestic resilience and long-term economic development. So, as we conclude this explainer, we are left with a highly provocative concept. Whether you accept the premise of this 2012 text or not, it succeeds in doing exactly what fringe or radical economics is meant to do. It forces us to think. When a text suggests something as shocking as privatizing currency issuance to defeat deflation and fund massive public infrastructure, it demands we ask ourselves, how do these unorthodox proposals force us to reevaluate the boundaries of traditional monetary policy? Are the current rules of our financial system permanent laws of nature, or simply habits we are just too afraid to break? It's a fascinating question, and for sure one that leaves us with plenty more to explore. Thanks so much for learning with us today.